how to make a crayon pouch that holds 12 Stockmar block crayons and 16 stick crayons. You'll need a fabric piece cut 22.5 inches by 12 inches. Best will be corduroy material or denim material, or you can use different layers if you want to do 2 layers of cotton fabric with batting in the middle, or 2 layers of medium weight. But in the end, you should have 22.5 inches by 12 inches. You'll need thread that matches the fabric the best possible. You'll need pins, yardstick or a ruler, a yard of ribbon, a marking tool, and a new block crayon and stick crayon. And each pouch will take you about 30 minutes to an hour depending on your speed. So you take the piece of fabric, and first you're going to sew a 1/4 of an inch seam, just one time folded over, on both long ends of the fabric. So first I'm going to sew the 1/4 inch seam. And you're going to do that all the way along both long sides. Next, on one of the short sides, you do a seam that's folded over twice, just kind of a 1/4 inch each way, just so that it's a clean hem. I just kind of tuck it in by hand instead of pinning. On the other end, you're going to do the same thing, except first you need to tuck a piece of ribbon inside of there. So about 5.25 inches from the top. You'll make a mark, and then I'll show you how to tuck in the ribbon. I'm going to take a piece of ribbon, and this is a yard long, and I'm going to fold it exactly in half, and then the detail side I'll have pointing towards each other on the inside. And then I'm going to do the side just like I did the side before it, where I have kind of a rolled over double hem. But when I get to my mark that I made at 5.25 inches down from the top, I'm going to stop for a second, and I'm going to tuck the ribbon. This is the folded side. And I'm going to tuck it inside. And sometimes you have to do a little wiggling. Maybe people might use pins here, but I tend to skip the pins. And so you want it tucked all the way inside that you can get it. And then flip it over so that it's coming in front of the presser foot, and you're going to sew over it. Sometimes it gets a little thick here, so you might have to lift the presser foot just a tiny bit to get it to go over. Just so, and I go forward and backward a few times so that it will hold it nice and tight. And then just sew to the end. So now you should have a hem on all 4 sides, the top and bottom, and just have a single hem with a rough edge, and that's okay because that won't show. And these 2 sides have a more hidden hem that's been folded over twice. And this one 5.25 inches down has ribbon coming out from the side like that. So now it is time to fold and pin the fabric to start the pockets. The top I'm going to fold and pin, and this is going to be 1 3/4 inches, and the bottom I'm going to fold up 2.5 inches and pin that and get it ready to make the pockets. Now I've done the pinning. I just pin one time on all 4 corners. This I measure as 1 3/4, and this from here to here is 1 3/4. This is 2.5 inches, and this is 2.5 inches as well. and you can see that you measure it about like that, about 1 3/4 inches, and this one is about 2.5 inches. So pinning the corners and then sewing these sides just helps you keep this all together for when you're sewing the final pockets. So now I'm going to sew from here to here on this side and from here to here on this side, and you just use about the width of the presser foot, just 1/4 inch seam on both sides, just right against the edge to hold this all down. And the fabric is pretty thick here, so you may have to really work that through the machine. So now I'm gonna sew here and here. I'm gonna go ahead and take my pin out so that I don't sew over it, and sometimes I have to force that through. When you get to this part here, this is going to be pulled on a lot when you're taking crayons in and out, so I kind of do a little extra reinforcement on those spots. And I just went backwards and forwards over that a little bit. Make sure your ribbon's out of the way so you don't accidentally sew over it or anything again. And now when I get to here, I find this to be the trickiest spot. I kind of have to lift my foot to let it get under there. And then I go over this again. And I'll take the pin out. And one side's done, and now I'll do the other side. Okay, so now you have each side has been sewn all the way so that this kind of holds everything, so that you can flatten it out and make sure that it stays roughly 1 3/4 inches here and 2.5 inches here while you're sewing the pockets. So now it's time to measure for the block pockets. And for the block pockets, I actually use an actual block to measure, because the width of this block is exactly right for the block to fit into. And the width of that block is 1 5/8 inches, but it's just a lot easier to basically take the block and lay it down and find the edge seam. There's your starting point right there. And then I take something to mark the cloth with, and I use it to mark the 1 5/8 inches, and I do that all the way down. Do that all the way down the cloth, and you should be able to fit 12 pockets, and they're all spaced 1 5/8 inches apart. Now I take the cloth that is marked and ready, and I just sew the pockets. I line up the line I made, and I just try to eyeball it and make sure that I'm following a straight line to sew the pocket. And when I'm at the top near this open part where it's going to be pulled on again and again when the crayon goes in and out, I do a few extra back and forths just to add a little more strength. And so you'll do each one of these until you have 12 total pockets, but this pocket should fit a crayon right there, and you're going to make 12 of those. So now you should have 12 pockets, and you can just make sure that each pocket fits a crayon, and it should fit fairly snug, but not so snug that it's so tight that everything's pulling. But if you make them too loose, then it's really, they get stretched out and they start falling out. So now that we've got the blocks, now it's time to measure for the sticks. And turn it this way. The sticks are it's 2.5 inches this way is that part. And they are a little bit narrower, and the stick crayon pockets will actually be 1 1/8 inches wide. But I use the width of my yardstick because the width of my actual yardstick, the width this way, is actually exactly 1 1/8 inches wide. And so I simply take the yardstick up to the edge, find where it's actually the edge of the first seam, and draw a line that way. And then I keep doing that, starting here, going there. I keep doing that until I've got, you'll fit about 16 of them. And then at the end you'll have a little tiny pocket that's not quite as wide, and you can go ahead and just leave that because you can put a lead pencil in there or something. So I'm going to go ahead and measure all the way across and then sew those just like I sewed these, but following along on these lines until I have 16 pockets plus a little tiny one on the end that are for sticks. And so now you have a finished crayon pouch. The sticks go here and the blocks all go here, and you just roll it up, and you've got your ribbon right here for you to tie it with, and it's finished.